Hi everybody, Tchadas Leo here, host of Our Native Land through Czech Podcast Studios in Victoria, British Columbia. Before we get into today's guest, I would like to do a territory acknowledgement. I acknowledge with respect the Lekwungen peoples on whose traditional territory Czech Studio stands upon, and to all the tribes that are part of the Coast Salish, Nuu-Channel, and Kwakwaka'wakw on Vancouver Island. I thank these nations and traditional land keepers for allowing us to live, work, and play on their lands. And as always, I thank you, the listener and viewer, for tuning in to another episode of Our Native Land. Today's guest is from the Indigenous Caregivers of BC. And the Indigenous Caregivers of BC supports the unique needs of caregivers of Indigenous children, Indigenous communities, with targeted development, recruitment, and training of Indigenous caregiver families with the PRIDE model of practice. Indigenous Caregivers of BC is funded by the Ministry of Children and Family Development. With me today from the Indigenous Caregivers of BC is April Reeve. She is mixed blood person of Cree and English descent, born and raised in Victoria. Together with her partner Wayne, they have 3 adult children and 6 grandchildren. April and her partner are also foster parents and have had many Indigenous children and youth come to live with them over the years. April Reeve has worked in the Indigenous child welfare system for over 20 years. She has been a youth support worker and family support worker, as well as the program manager for a house of high-risk Indigenous youth. April is now the caregiver support for foster parents in BC who are looking after Indigenous children and youth. April, welcome to Our Native Land.
Thank you, Tchadas. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy you took some time out of your busy schedule to meet with us. We greatly appreciate it. Let's talk a bit about your journey and your career and how you got into being part of the child welfare system and ultimately part of the Indigenous Perspectives Society's program, which is the Indigenous the Indigenous Caregivers of BC.
Yes, thank you. Many years ago in the late 1990s, my husband and I, Wayne, lived in Nanaimo at that time, and we lived beside a home that was a group home for youth. And just through conversations over the fence, they asked us if we would do some relief work for them, and that started our journey. We moved down to Victoria. We worked at the Victoria Native Friendship Center for many years as a family support worker. My husband was a social worker, and we had an opportunity as the Friendship Center was opening up a home called Cedar House. So we went in and we were able to open up that home and do a lot of the things that we thought were right with raising Indigenous children. And we went out, and then after the Cedar House, we went and we just started fostering on our own. And then we decided that maybe I should go to work part-time. I was getting a little bored at home, and through connections with community, I found out about this job at Indigenous Perspectives Society, and I applied for it, and I was the lucky recipient of that job. And it has been a great journey, and I really feel that this job just fits right in for me, as far as I've always wanted to support caregivers as they go through the journey of fostering.
It sounds like a rewarding job then.
It's very rewarding. It's hard sometimes, but it is very rewarding.
Absolutely. Like any job with the child welfare system, there's some really good parts and there's some also tough parts that have to be handled as well too. So I completely understand. Let's get into a bit about the program itself. So let's focus on a good summary of what it is that your program is doing to help Indigenous children in the child welfare system.
Okay, well, I support Indigenous caregivers of Indigenous children or non-Indigenous caregivers of Indigenous children. So if they have any questions, any concerns, sometimes it's just a friendly ear to listen to them, to give them feedback. That's what my position is for the supporting the foster parents. And then of course there's the education piece. So I am responsible for registering all of the caregivers that are going through Pride pre-service, and for all of the DAAs, the Delegated Aboriginal Agencies in BC. So when a foster parent, or when someone is going to go in and become a foster parent, they have to go through an approval process, of course. And as they're working through that process, the resource worker will make the referral to me, and then I register them for Pride pre-service. And that is a 12-week program. There's 10 sessions, and it's a really good snapshot of some of the reasons why children may come into care, how to deal with maybe those behavioral issues that may come up for foster parents, grief and loss, which a lot of children go through when they come into care. And yeah, it's a really good program.
Yeah, so let's talk a bit more about that. So let's say me and my significant other would like to, we're thinking like, you know what, we don't have any children right now. We got a spare bedroom. We feel like there's a need out there, and I'm sure there is for good foster parents to
Mm.
understand the needs of Indigenous children in the system. So take me through the first step and kind of, walk me through what's going to happen if I contact you.
So I'm the first contact for a lot of people when they're thinking that maybe they would like to go through this process. So I do what is called an intake referral. I take some information, why they're interested in fostering, how many children they have in the home, if any at all. I go through the criminal record check, explaining that that's mandatory, and also the prior contact checks. And then when I'm finished, I take that referral form and I find the DAA that is in their region, and I make contact with that office, and then I send up that referral to that agency. And then they start their approval process. And a lot of times I have contact with the potential foster parents throughout that process. Maybe someone, they don't understand what's been said to them, so I'll interpret that for them.
Mhm.
Yeah, so and then I meet up with them again when they are referred to Pride pre-service, and then I'm a facilitator with that, and I go through that process with the foster parents. Even though they don't see me, it is online,
Mhm.
and if they have any problems with technology, or once again, just not understanding something, they have that ability to contact me, and I can walk through that with
Okay.
them.
And Pride is the online program itself, like the 12-week program. Is that correct?
Right, it's
Okay.
called Free Service,
Okay.
yes.
All right. So you take them through that process. They complete that process. From there, is there's still a bit more approval process in place, or it's just they're trained up and then they just sit and wait? Is that how that works?
But well, there's a home study
Hmm.
throughout that process, and that's what the delegated Aboriginal agency would do, is go through that home study.
Hmm.
And then once they have their certificate, they can, if they finish the home study, then the children can be placed in the home.
Hmm. Okay. And is do you find when people do apply, is there a general consensus of who's applying? Is it just a family that want to just add more children to the children they already have? Is it people that don't have children that just want to have children part time? Is there a general idea of who's contacting you, or is it all over the place?
Yeah, there's a wide range of people from 19 years up in age.
Hmm.
A lot of times I find that people maybe have witnessed something, either seen something on the news, and that maybe, or in the community. The MCFD and the delegated Aboriginal agencies do a great job of recruiting foster parents. So maybe they've seen something like that, and they have the idea that they want to adopt, or not adopt, sorry, foster Indigenous children.
Hmm.
So, of course, on the MCFD website, as well as the Indigenous Perspectives website, I am connected to the Indigenous side of it. So that's how they contact me. A lot of times, we've had people that want to be caregivers that have been children in care themselves, and now
Hmm.
they're adults and they want to give something back. And I think that's great.
Do you know if the ratio of people that want to be caregivers that are Indigenous and non-Indigenous, are they mostly Indigenous couples or people, or is there a wide range of that as well?
I think so. I think in a lot of communities, smaller communities where maybe there is the delegated Aboriginal agency, they recruit people from their community to keep the children in their community, which is so important, right?
Hmm.
These smaller communities, if the children need to leave their home,
Hmm.
there's they have to go to the larger city if there
Yeah.
is no foster parents approved in that area. So I've worked with several delegated Aboriginal agencies pre-COVID when I would go and I would do Pride pre-service in person, and we would have 30 or 35 people from the various communities around that Prince George or Williams Lake, those at Port Alberni, that's another one, right?
Hmm.
So I think it's really important to have Indigenous foster parents in the community so our kids don't have to leave their community, right?
Absolutely. How has COVID changed your job?
Well, it's changed it lots. I used to go out and go to these communities, fly in, and I would be there from Friday until Monday, and of course now I can't do that.
Hmm.
So I do it online, and I support uh, foster parents going through that, but it's all done over phone and online. And some people, have a hard time with that. They want to see another face or
Yeah.
they want to talk to you in person. And
Yeah.
I understand that, but I can't do anything about that at this
Absolutely.
time, right?
Yeah, no, I understand. And my mother's actually a social worker, and she's talking about how a lot of I think most of the time they have to do the house evaluations virtually. With a lot of people going around their
Hmm.
house with the phone or the iPad and showing the house around. And it's such a change from being there in person, right? So I can only imagine the little challenges that you're facing along the way.
Yes,
Yeah,
it has been difficult. And I
yeah.
think as Indigenous people, we like to gather, we like to share food, we like to share stories.
Hmm.
And I think COVID has definitely changed things.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about why the program is so important. You know, what changes have you seen in the foster care program because of the program that you're a part of through the Indigenous Perspectives Society? What's the real in-depth value of this?
It's really important for foster parents to feel supported throughout the process of fostering. You know, there's a big team of people that are around a child in care, but sometimes they're busy doing other things, social workers, family support workers, and we understand that. And it's really important for foster parents to stay connected to someone that cares, someone that understands, someone that is empathetic, and someone who has gone through maybe some of the same concerns or issues that they're going through, right? And just to let them know that someone is there for them. And I think that that has really changed, especially for a lot of Indigenous people, when they feel supported. I think that it makes fostering uh, a different journey, maybe if you're fostering in isolation,
Hmm.
right? Or you're afraid to ask a question to a social worker, resource social worker, because maybe you don't want to look silly, right? If you
Yeah.
don't know the answer to that question. So I think that what it's done is that it's opened it up with the understanding that they can reach out to someone and that they don't have to be in isolation, that they can work through these issues or problems that come up for them as they go through fostering.
Absolutely. Now, when you were foster caring children, I don't know if you're still doing that now as well or not, but when you were first doing that, did you have this kind of support system that you're doing for people now? Did you wish you had that, or what was available, back in the early 90s?
Yeah, no, there was nothing around like this. And there was a lot of Indigenous children that were in non-Indigenous homes and not having the understanding of the intergenerational trauma, of the effects of colonization, right? And there was no one to reach out to. And there are foster parent associations on Vancouver Island, and they do great work too, but it's the Indigenous side of it and understanding the history. So this is something that has always been very important to me, that foster parents feel supported and have someone that they can talk to that is non-judgmental,
Hmm.
and understands where they're coming from through their struggles or even through their happy moments, right? A
Yeah,
lot of times foster parents want to share that,
yeah.
right? And so, yeah, I think it's made a difference for fostering, the fostering community when um, foster parents understand that there is someone there to support them. And like I said, this is something that I've always wanted to do. And it's been a seed that was planted in me through my journey through beginning to foster when, there wasn't really a lot of support out there for foster parents.
Mhm. I'm really curious about this. When somebody gets a child in the foster care system, let's say the child is 16 or 17 years old, and obviously at a certain age they fall off the care system and become an adult, and they're left to their own well being. Do you find that the way that you're teaching the people that are taking care of these Indigenous children that are older, that are about to graduate school and move on to adulthood, are you preparing them as best as you can for the real world that lies ahead?
I would hope so.
Sorry, I don't
I
mean to
think
put you on the spot, but
no,
I just say.
I'm just trying to think that, have many years looked after high risk Indigenous youth that come with, many, issues. They're affected by intergenerational trauma. Maybe there is substance abuse, and I like to think that we've prepared youth for aging out, and the ministry has a wonderful program now where they support youth that are aging out from ages 19 to
That
24.
was my next question. Yeah.
Yes, and that is a wonderful program when we look at, you know, when we have our own children, when they turn 19, we don't say, okay, it's time to go, right? We have that space for
Hmm.
our children, and it's so important for our Indigenous youth to be able to have that space for them too. And our Indigenous children, once they've graduated from high school, they can go on to post-secondary education and they don't have to pay tuition fee also. So that is a really wonderful thing that has happened. And I know we've had a few youth that were with us in the past that have gone on to, get their degrees. One is going to be a social worker. She's not quite finished. And another one is in the youth and childcare program up at UVic. So, I think that it's a great opportunity for youth to be able to hang on to that support of their foster family. So yeah, I like to think, like I said, that we can ready children for aging out. Um, Sometimes kids don't want to age out, so you may be met with a little bit of anger
Yeah.
or resistance, but in general, I think that we we have prepared them well, and I think that a lot of foster parents have prepared their children well for aging out.
Yeah, and well, I'll tell you, I just turned 30, and just losing the word 20 something, on my age, like that's a struggle. So I can only imagine when you're, going to be left to your own device to be an adult, how difficult it can be. So having those programs in place are fantastic.
Hmm.
So quickly,
Yeah.
we've got to wrap up soon. If like I said before, if I'm somebody, I'm remotely interested, I want to learn more. Obviously you're the first point of contact. So for people that are listening or watching and want to know more, where do they go?
Well, they can contact me by my phone and do you want me to give you the
Yep,
number?
give me the number, the email, the
Okay,
website, everything.
sure. Okay, so my phone number is 250-857-4969. My email is aprilr@ipsociety.ca.
Mhm.
And that is my 2 points of contact. And people can email, they can phone me. Even if they just have questions to ask about the process, I can do my best to answer those questions, and we can go from there.
Absolutely. And also the way that I found you was just Googling Indigenous Caregivers of BC. And on the website, there's a lot of information on, steps and intake and resources. Am I correct?
There is.
Yeah.
There's the Indigenous Caregivers of BC resides on the Indigenous Perspectives Society website, and there is a tab on there that says caregivers, and it is full of information, full of resources for caregivers, potential caregivers, and parents also. So yeah, I would invite anybody to open that up and have a look at it because it's a really good website.
Fantastic. April, I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today and educating me and the listener and the viewer on what you and the Indigenous Caregivers of BC do under the umbrella of the Indigenous Perspectives Society. April, thank you so much for being on our native land.
Thank you, Tchadas.